We're now going to talk about the blockchain. So, as our speakers today have shown us, imagination, passion, and courage can make it digital a great tool for change. And those traits are strong. In our next group of speakers, who all work with powerful emerging technology, they all work with blockchain. And blockchain is often linked with Bitcoin and the shadowy side of the internet, but our panelists today will help us see how blockchain is much more than the backbone of cryptocurrency. Moderating our discussion is Lynn Lakasha. Lynn is Cognizant's AVP of corporate marketing. She actually started her career on Wall Street, structuring finance, debt, and fixed income derivatives. And naturally, she's interested in the complex mechanics of our financial system. However, most of her career has been spent as a marketing and brand expert, and she's made the complex and changing products and services of companies like AT&T, Google, Standard & Poor's, and DTCC comprehensible and relevant to their customers. Now she leads our brand narrative efforts, crafting stories that explain how complex technology works and how it can create client benefit to customers around the world. So, welcome, Lynn.
Thank you.
Lynn is going to welcome the rest of the panel.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. I have a feeling some of you guys may be thinking you can relax a little bit because blockchain is just for financial services, and let us assure you, nothing can be further from the truth. You probably know the Andreessen quote comparing blockchain to the internet, but what you might not know is that the World Economic Forum predicts that in just 10 years, in 2027, 10% of global GDP will be stored on a blockchain. So this, as Malcolm said, is more than Bitcoin, more than cryptocurrency. What we're really talking about is a distributed ledger that can store assets or content of any kind, and because it's shared and replicated and encrypted, it can be verified and become this source of truth. So if that sounds revolutionary, it really could be. And I think that's why there's so much hype about how blockchain could change everything. It could disrupt the disruptors like Uber. It could help all the 50 billion smart connected products coming online in the next couple of years talk to each other and pay each other fractions of a penny, and we wouldn't have to get involved at all. It could potentially power prediction markets. So that we would know, because of all the users coming together, an accurate prediction of whether or not it's going to be the Cavs' year this year for the first time, or who might win this crazy election coming in the fall. But all that's really heady stuff, and it's super early days for this technology. So we're thrilled to have here on stage 3 people who are doing what Malcolm talked about yesterday, doing that really hard work of just exploring how this technology could potentially make things better in their particular industries. So with that, I'd just like to ask them each to introduce themselves and to talk a little bit about how they got started with blockchain. So Lata, you first, please, and then down the chain.
Thank you, Lynn, and hello, everyone. I'm Lata Varghese. I come from our digital banking consulting practice, and I now lead the blockchain practice for Cognizant, which is a cross-functional team of vertical industry experts, blockchain technologists, as well as enterprise solution architects. Now, from a consulting space, obviously, we've been observing cryptocurrencies and the potential impact they could have with payments for a couple of years. And early in 2015, when the underlying technology blockchain started to emerge from its cryptocurrency roots, we said, hey, there's something deeper here. This has the potential to radically transform the business and financial services landscape. So we started to explore that in a little more detail. And personally, for me, I dived in about 8 months ago, and I'm discovering it's a pretty deep pool.
Chris?
Yeah, I completely agree with Lata. My name is Chris Swanson. I work in U.S. Bank's Innovation Research and Development team. So U.S. Bank is the 5th largest bank in the U.S. with about $415 billion in assets. And in research and development, our mandate is to look 3 to 5 years out into the future to understand what's happening with emerging technologies, changing business and consumer behavior, emergent business models, and understand where those things intersect with financial services. In late, say, Q4 2014, our chief innovation officer, who I report up through, came over to my desk and more or less said, congratulations, you're the blockchain guy. And 15 months later, here I am up on stage speaking before astronauts. So, what a time to be alive. No, in all seriousness, and I would kind of second how Lata and Cognizant ultimately got into it. I think, in up to, say, early 2015, it was largely a discussion about Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, for what it's worth, is this sort of novel intersection of database technology, a shared distributed network, and cryptology, public key cryptography. And so these three things come together to create this really interesting value proposition. But based on sort of how Bitcoin is put together, it's pseudonymous, so the parties there don't interact with one another directly. You don't know who everyone is that's participating. It doesn't necessarily work very well in a heavily regulated industry like financial services. So to that extent, we were following it, but it probably didn't crack our top 10 list of things that we were looking into in 2015. And as Lata said, the technology began to divorce itself, the underlying technology, the platform, and the protocol began to divorce itself from the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, which is where I think we've found a lot of interesting applications within the financial services and other spaces. So we'll talk a little bit about the journey as to where we are today and how we got there as we get forwards here. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Greenberg. I'm a serial entrepreneur and inventor working in the entertainment space. I've been pursuing democratic forms of media my entire career. And that led me to leave the film industry in the early 90s to create what I called a studio of the future for omnidirectional, interactive, and immersive entertainment. That was really early, right? Because, of course, that's what's happening now. But in order to be able to pursue the things I was interested in, I had to found companies. And I'm best known for having created Gracenote, which is the largest entertainment data company in the world. It does automatic content recognition and metadata services and handles billions of requests for data a day, embedded in over 1 billion devices and 100 million cars. And it was like started in my living room. So, I am a storyteller, immersive storyteller who had to dive deeply into technology in order to be able to realize the products that I felt consumers wanted. And it's been a very long journey to get to this point in time. But I will say this, at my new company, Scene Play, we are trying to atomize and automate the creation of collaborative content. And it's kind of a big problem, which I was working on when I attended this nerd summer camp, which I do every summer. And one of the other nerds said to me when I described what I was working on, "Have you ever heard of blockchain?" And this is about 3 years ago. And I said, "No." And I started to dive into it. And I realized I had designed so much of the system using traditional databases, but that I could really just jump over into this new world of blockchain, and I was hooked. So we'll get into that as we go.
Fantastic. Well, let's start talking about the areas of opportunity you guys see in your respective industries. So, Chris, if you wouldn't mind telling us about banking.
Yeah, that's what everyone was looking for today, a good discussion on banking. No, I think, so the way that we look at this technology is to try to understand kind of what the major business problems that it solves are. So while we can look at the technology and talk about how remarkable it is and the things that it can do that existing technology stacks maybe couldn't do or it couldn't do as well, we try to find the areas where we think that this could help. And I'm going to use an esoteric example and then talk a little bit about how it might apply to other industries. So syndicated loans, for instance, which is effectively large corporate loans where there is one agent bank who works with a number of other banks to underwrite debt, and then they all sort of have equal parts of it. It's largely controlled by a few banks, say dozen or 2 dozen, control a majority of the market space. And it is a very inefficient process. So whereas you might talk about an equity transaction might settle in 3 days, a syndicated loan transaction might take a week, it might take 20 days, it might take 60 days, depending on all the constituent parts. And so kind of looking at that in the abstract, those are 2 things where we think this technology can help. At its heart, what blockchain and distributed ledger tech does is it helps to resolve what the truth is among many parties. And in today's world, we use intermediaries to do that. That might be banks, it might be the Federal Reserve. If you're buying a house, it might be a title company. And those entities sit in the middle of transactions to provide a golden record or an absolute version of the truth that everyone agrees with. What distributed ledger and blockchain do is allow that truth to exist at each individual party, and the code enforces what the truth is. It can't be changed without the other party agreeing to what that change is. And so when you talk about something with respect to syndicated loans, what the technology does is it allows all of the parties to the transaction, the agent and the other participating banks, even the customer or the buyers at the other end if it's sold into the secondary market, what it allows is all of those groups then benefit in some way, shape, or form. From the bank's perspective, from the underwriting bank's perspective, they get to clear that asset off of their balance sheet earlier, meaning they don't have to hold the capital charges or the capital as long, and consequently there are advantages from a capital charge perspective. From the buyer's perspective, right, today they are buying something and they're not in a hurry because they want to make sure that that asset is as good as what has been purported. And what this technology does is provide an immense amount of transparency into how that asset is actually put together. So that's a space where I think if you can find an area where there is more market consolidation, right, fewer players, that is relatively inefficient compared to other markets, those are the spaces that we're concentrating most of our efforts right now.
Excellent. Lata, could you just do a little bit of a quick generalization on, financial services in general?
Absolutely. From what we're seeing, I think while there's a lot of hype clearly, and people may disagree about the size and the timing of the benefits, but just given the coming together of these technologies in the way that they have, and the potential they have to lower cost, improve settlement time, faster settlement, enhance security with transparency, I think it just opens up a wide range of possibilities. But obviously, en masse financial systems today are a product of a lot of years of automation and regulation and whatnot. So as Chris just said, we think parts of the process will start moving. It's just the amount of human and financial capital that's being invested, it's just going to happen. But while you may have disagreement about the size and the timing of benefits, I think there's no denying the core fundamental transformative nature of this technology.
Excellent. Well, Anne, I think you're a very interesting case to have here with us on this stage, because there's so much talk about what it can do in financial services, and I think having a little bit of simplicity and reality in the discussion is always helpful. But could you talk a little bit about some of the opportunities you see in media and entertainment?
Sure, of course. Well, media and entertainment is really just a reflection of our larger culture and the underlying technologies we all use, right? And so it has to change with the times as well. And one of the big problems in entertainment as it went out onto the internet was, of course, they were putting their product out in a digital format insecurely. So as I started to look at this, the two places that really spoke to me in terms of how blockchain could be very useful were in digital rights management, obviously, and in creating flattened marketplaces, more direct marketplaces between creators and their fans or their audience. And so what blockchain does, because it's cryptographically secure, is it does something that the RAA, the Record Industry Association of America, and the MPAA, which is the Motion Picture Association of America, could never do, and that's to create digital scarcity. That's a really big deal from the entertainment industry's point of view, because what that means is you can cryptographically secure a piece of content to a user or to a use. And so a lot of the first implementations of blockchain for entertainment will be, of course, in the music industry, for example, having an artist sell directly to their fan. That's sort of this utopian view of it, right? And because everything is recorded and immutable, you can actually track every transaction. And it shines a big floodlight on all of those transactions. And so a lot of the people who do the accounting, or the professional rights organizations, the PROs that do this accounting, become less important. They'll, of course, be there to probably certify things to a certain degree. But it removes a lot of the middleman. The other area that I think is really interesting, and what I was trying to solve is a more complex problem, not just a marketplace problem of getting content to the right user at the right time, which we call personalization, but really solving a different problem, which was hyper-personalization. How do we co-create content? How do we create content that changes on the fly as it meets its audience? How do we engage the audience and bring them into the process so they're literally creating content together? And blockchain really opens that up, because now we can micronize all the elements in a piece of content and onboard all the data that it's needed so that it can go out and find other people who have complementary content and automatically assemble it. But that is sort of the more complicated thing that I'm working on. But in essence, it's a marketplace between a creator and their audience. But anybody can be a creator, so it's very democratizing.
One more thing before we leave you, because I know how many cool things you're thinking about. Tell the audience a little bit about your smart scripts and how they can be what you called a collaboration tool for the 21st century. How do they work?
So Scene Play is a smart content company that's based on a smart script. And the script, if you know what that is basically the way we organize the creation of content. And when you see the end of a movie and you see thousands of credits going by, all of those people are organized around this little paper document called a script. Now, of course, we do it electronically now. Once it's electronic, we can now turn it into something that's machine readable and human readable and smart. So that's what we're doing. The core of Scene Play is something which allows us to scale storytelling like we scale technology, because now the script becomes the organizing feature because it's a piece of code. And because it's more complex, we want to be able to track everything down to the smallest little pieces. So we're doing a platform and some consumer-facing products which allow the audience to participate deeply in the creation of the co-creation of that content. But from a brand point of view, what they're able to do is put their story out into the crowd and bring them into that script and keep them on message and have them participate. So that's really what we're doing at Scene Play, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I found it fascinating. This was kind of what hooked me into the conversation and really made my head explode about how many directions this could go in. But sort of on that note, let's talk a little bit about how you guys are all going through the process of making it real. What's the exploration and the experimentation in order to do that? So Lata, let's start with you. How do you help clients systematically explore these opportunities in financial services?
Sure. So like I said, early in 2015, we had consulting looking at it, and everybody was talking about what is blockchain. Very abstract conversation, a cool conversation, but an abstract conversation. We said we're a technology company, so shouldn't we be experimenting with the technology ourselves? So we dedicated a core set of engineers. And there's plenty of, as I was chatting with, I think someone from the Toronto Exchange, plenty of blockchain religions there. So we are secular, so we have all modes of blockchain engineers in our team. They're experimenting with the various blockchain frameworks there, Ethereum, Eris, Factom, the Bitcoin blockchain, Ripple, and so on. So early in 2015, we started investing in engineers that look at the various open, and a bulk of it is open source, although more recently we've started to also work with specific partners who are sort of solving for product solutions for a specific market segment. In those cases, we have some partnerships where we are actually working in their sandbox. But going back to 2015, it was broadly about taking the various open source frameworks there and start building with it. We are a technology company. We can't just talk about it. We have to do it. So we started to build these asset solution accelerators. And then the what is blockchain started to get to be more of okay, what can blockchain do? What are the various facets of this technology? How do you do a digital asset? How do you sign it to the blockchain? Simple concepts, but they're not that intuitive. So by experimenting with it, we built these assets. And then, how do you do multi-signature on a contract and then actually transfer a title, for example? So various such things were experimented with. And then that started to pique the interest of a number of our clients who were coming to us with So a lot of financial services is where the practice sits today, but of course there's interest, like we're seeing across our industries. So a number of our clients started to come and talk to us about, hey, how can you help me? And they are all part of consortiums, and they are doing things there. And every big bank, if not every bank, has been asked to have a blockchain strategy. So everybody is looking at it. So when it comes to actually experimenting with the technology, though, the kind of teams that they have dedicated to it, be it innovation teams, they're part of strategy teams, small teams, they don't have a lot of research dollars or R&D dollars to be doing this research themselves. So they started to take advantage of, some of the experiments that we have done, and then we started to build out some use cases in their internal context. Now, some would argue, is this the right use case? Is there a business case? We don't think of all the work that we've done even with US Bank, we don't think any of these experiments are wasteful, because unless you take the technology and put it in the context of your enterprise, see what it's good for, not good for. And like I said, we're secular, so we are not a blockchain startup. We're not saying the technology can solve world hunger. We're just experimenting. So when we do that, clients also started to engage us to actually develop these prototypes, and they use these to go and actually get an organization behind them, because we live in the real enterprise where it is unrealistic to expect that a blockchain technology, which is at as early as it is in the technology cycle, will just take off. It may be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, who knows? But as you start to put it in the context of your own organization is when you start to look for some real answers. How does this fit in with my current enterprise IT? Maybe the whole thing is a dud, who knows, I don't think so. But if it does evolve as one of the architecture paradigms of the future, you have to start thinking about how does this fit into mine. So even simple experiments like blockchain APIs are asynchronous by nature. That's not the way most enterprise IT today is designed. So when we started to put the experiments we've done with Mizuho and other clients, we have to start to answer those questions. So it's a good time where the technology is today to look at it as a way to simplify. And even if you don't believe it's going to change a lot of the processes, you have time, it's a good time to simplify your IT, right? So you don't want to slap on more, like I like to say, blockchain spaghetti on top of your existing spaghetti. So it's a good time to look at it. Yeah.
Chris, can you elaborate a little bit on what you're doing at US Bank?
Yeah, I mean, to a large extent, like Lata said, we're kind of sitting here at the moment of creation, right? And trying to articulate what blockchain and distributed ledger tech can do. And notice I'm using those words interchangeably because there isn't a set vernacular yet, right? And so it would be like trying to explain, in 1987 what the internet, what are you going to do with the internet, right? You just don't know because you don't fully understand what the technology can do. So to that extent, honestly, for the first 6 months I was working on this, I was convincing people that we weren't doing anything with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, again, really great solution, but it solves a problem that financial services as an industry doesn't have, which is around censorship resistance. So convince people that we weren't doing Bitcoin, then begin to talk about, okay, what can the technology do well that other technologies, existing technologies, might not be able to do, and to begin really just to ask the questions to figure out what the right questions to ask will be, right? Because that then informs, okay, what are the spaces that we really want to begin working in? Where do we want to make investments? What business units across the organization do we want to get engaged? And we moved, I think, fairly recently from the proof of technology phase. Does the technology do what it purports to do? And I think in most cases, the answer to that question is yes. But now it's a question of, okay, what sort of value is it going to drive, either from an expense mitigation perspective, what sort of value can it provide to our customers, right? Because they're who we ultimately need to do this for. And they honestly don't really care about the technology as long as it helps them be more efficient in their operations. And so, and then understanding, can it scale in a way that is going to provide real value to the organization? So I think that's where we are in terms of our discovery process right now. We're comfortable with the technology in terms of what it can do. Now it's trying to understand some of the platforms that Lata laid out in terms of what are they good at versus other platforms, and who do we need to plug in from the rest of the organization to begin working on this.
Excellent. Now, Anne, how are you setting about building this platform? What are you focusing on first?
Well, I agree with Lata and Chris. It is still a very experimental stage. I don't have the luxury of having a lab where I can just experiment. I'm an entrepreneur, so I have to really dive in and figure out what the business uses are. I'm not saying you aren't, but what the business uses are and how we can realize revenues more quickly using this kind of technology. I would say one of the hardest things for me was I had to find somebody who really understood what I wanted to do, a cryptographer who could translate what I was trying to build, which was basically a cryptographic hierarchical rights management system underlying a tokenized block exchange of value for content elements. That's a mouthful, right? But I would say to everyone in the room that it's very important to recognize how important cryptography is to blockchain, and that they are not ubiquitous. Each one is unique, and they will kind of like an algorithm express the underlying goals of your business. So I think finding great cryptographers is incredibly important to top line to-do list item. So for us specifically, what we try to do is start very simply and try to look at the simplest forms of content that could be co-created. And so one of the things that we're working on is basically a joke engine, which is a knock-knock joke engine, which allows people to perform inside a knock-knock joke with, let's say, your favorite comedian, like Will Ferrell, for example. I mean, I can't even think of his face without laughing, right? But the benefit for Will is that you end up being able to get paid every time a user is in that same knock-knock joke with you. So you record once, and then the crowd records infinitely with you. And that's a pretty interesting form of entertainment for the crowd. It's totally engaging, but it provides a financial reward for the originator of that content.
And it's a much smaller script length than, say, a feature film. So you're doing that same road testing.
We look at short form or branded content or trailers, for instance, things that are adjacent to the main content IP, so that marketing departments and casting departments and groups like that, who we really give direct benefit to early on.
I have to cut you off because I promised everyone that we would get to the astronauts on time, but I think you can tell that everyone has lots and lots more to say, and they promised they would be happy to talk to you. So I don't know, do we have time for everybody to just do one quick piece of advice for a company looking to explore the blockchain?
Sure.
Real quick.
I just wanted to say, we've seen other technology waves before, and this one's, sort of different and transformative. So it's a good thing to approach it a little bit differently. You don't want to, if one bank or one large institution comes with a breakthrough implementation, and then you don't want to be under the negative pressure of a technology race. So this is a good time to begin to sort of use the time to understand it, experiment it with yourself, and who better to disrupt you than yourself.
Nice. Chris?
You can learn everything that you need to from a foundational level for free. It's all out there on the internet. And all it will take is your time, and there is unlimited downside risk for not doing something. Learn about it. Go read about it. Get a sense about where it might fit within your industry, and then begin to talk to others, either outside of your industry or consultancies, to get a sense about where they come down. But do something.
Yeah, I would agree with the panelists. Basically, it's a learning period of time. Take a look. There's a great book that just came out by Don and Alex Tapscott called The Blockchain Revolution. And, I think that's a great reading point. And, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.